We'd like to welcome everyone to the October 12th meeting of the New Bern Board of Aldermen. At this time, the prayer tonight will be given by Alderman Johnny Ray Kinsey.
Welcome to the New Bern Board of Aldermen meeting. I would like for Pastor Johnson to come up to the podium and open up prayer for us, please.
Mr. Mayor, wonderful Board of Aldermen, thank you, Brother Kinsey, for this invitation to come and to open the meeting with prayer, and I'm very overwhelmed and honored to have this privilege. Let us bow our heads. The scripture says, Psalms 46, verse 10, "Be still and know that I am God." So I ask each one of us tonight, this evening, to be still. If the door in your heart is open, we just invite you to close it, because I believe that our Creator, our Maker, our Father certainly has a word to share with us as we engage in this important meeting. We have much on our agenda that to be dealt with, to be discussed, and decisions to be made. And we certainly invite Him, who is the center of us all, to have a major part in guiding us in our deliberation and in our decision making on behalf of our citizens. So gracious God, our Father, we just thank you for bringing us together one more time as a family. Our mayor, our aldermen, city manager, upcoming new city manager, our attorney, and all other staff. We just thank you for allowing us to be family today. Not only this day, but all of our days as we live here in this great historic city. And dear Lord, you brought us a mighty long way, and we still have a mighty long way to go and much work yet to do. So we invite you to have your way within us.
Yes, Lord.
Let your will be done and not our will.
Yes.
For it's all about you and not about us.
Yes.
Unite us together once again in the spirit of love, unity, peace, and harmony. And as we do the work that you have charged us to do this afternoon, this evening, that we will be open to you in leading us in all that we do and say. And Lord, after we have done it, all that you assigned for us to do, when we leave here this evening, we will leave in peace and unity and a willing heart and a willing mind to return back to our various communities and do what you have ordered us to do. In the name of Jesus, the risen Lord and Savior, we offer this prayer to you, our Father, and Redeemer the Lord, say amen.
Amen. Amen. Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bingle. Here. Alderwoman Harris.
Present.
Alderman Astor.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Odom.
Here.
Any changes to the agenda before we get started? We have one request of petitions of citizens, Reverend Ray Griffin. Mr. Griffin, if you'd like to come forward.
Amen. God bless you. Ray Griffin, Banksville, North Carolina. I come to you with a petition on a request, just like the brother was praying. I worked in the prison system for 20-some years and worked in Newbern PD as a chaplain in the early part of 2000. And I have never seen such change as we're having in the last few years. The crisis with COVID and all these, and it seems that we have turned our back on God. So I just want to read this right fast. America needs a great revival. A revival will help the church to come back from its backsliding condition and includes conviction of sin on part of the church. Many individuals today are careless and concerned. Careless and unconcerned keep the people asleep. If we've ever been asleep, we are asleep today and we need to wake up. The church must awake and work and labor for men and women of this city and this nation. Many Christians have lost the spirit of prayer. America can't be saved by politics or economists or educators. Technology gives us progress without morality. We need to become strong again in the faith. It seems that almost every elected official in our government has a different idea how to confront the crisis that we are having today. Interests such as money and power rank to the top of their minds, while common morality and loyalty to their people are barely able to work these things into the system. Patriotic Americans need to stop looking for a hero to save America and be the hero that saves her. We must pattern our lives after the teaching of Jesus rather than after what is acceptable according to our culture. Our culture has changed tremendously. Be who you were born to be, not what you have become. America's Great Awakening is but the first step in praying for our country. The next step is to be aware as to the depth to which the enemies of freedom have stooped to destroy America and the ideas of liberty on which we were founded. Faith and prayer of the righteous are the foundation of the great revival. We must join together under the banner of Christ and under God. God will give us strength to face the impending dangers that we are facing. We must deepen our faith and be determined to go forward for Christ in the face of fear. If the word of God is not pronounced over the width and depth of this nation, anarchy and chaos will reign. We must heal the wounds and stop the bleeding. We need a spiritual, moral, and revival today. America's only hope is the gospel of Jesus Christ. I want you to join me in making Psalms 85.6 a daily prayer for our nation. It simply says, "Will thou not revive us again, that the people may rejoice in thee?" And I think all of you can agree that we are going through some situations today that are unprecedented. And I think it's only because we have turned our back on God and gone in the wrong direction. We see a lot of things happen, and I even go this far as in the Capitol, I saw the man pray, and he left out the name of Jesus. He would not say Jesus. And those things are not going to go unreached to God. God is going to have his way. So if y'all would join me in that. Read Psalms 85:6 and just say, "Wilt thou revive us again?" God needs to revive us and get us back on the right path. Amen? God bless you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That's all of our petitions of citizens. Next item is consent agenda.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda as is.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carries. Let's go to item number 7.
Good evening, Mayor, Alderman. At this time, we'd like to ask Jennifer Gonzalez, she is the Executive Director of A Promise Place, to come up and make a presentation.
Good afternoon or evening to everyone. I really appreciate the invitation to be here tonight and speak to you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the Board of Aldermen, for extending that invitation. At the outset, I do need to say I'm carrying our crisis phone. In the unlikely event it went off, I would have to step out.
Could you get closer to the mic? They can't hear you. Or
Does
speak
that
up.
help?
Yeah.
Okay.
And speak up a little bit.
And if I did get a crisis call, I would need to step out briefly. If time permitted, I would ask to rejoin. So I am the executive director at Promise Place, located here in New Bern. We are an organization that has been around for 45 years and counting. We were established in 1978, originally as a coalition for the Council for Women. And some years later, we divided up into focusing on sexual assault. And our sister agency, with whom you're probably familiar, the Coastal Women's Shelter, focuses on domestic violence. In 2017, we added offices in Pamlico County and also in Jones County to serve our clients and communities there. We are the only sexual assault resource center that serves all of Craven County. We're also the only sexual assault resource center that serves all of Pamlico County and all of Jones County. Our work is funded through local contributions and support, state funding, federal funding, and individual donors. I would invite you to visit our website where you can find opportunities to volunteer your time, your skills, and your money to support us in the important work that we do. We appreciate being able to partner with the City of New Bern, and we especially appreciate the opportunity to partner with the New Bern Police Department, Coastal Women's Shelter, RCS. We also partner with Craven County DSS, Craven County Schools, our recently opened Child Advocacy Center that's located, they just had their ribbon cutting last week. We partner with Carolina East Medical Center, the Sheriff's Department, and our local community college, among many, many others. We provide a variety of services that includes a three-pronged approach to eliminating sexual violence in our communities. This includes outreach and education, providing information on how adults, parents, and caregivers can prevent sexual abuse from happening to children in a program called Darkness to Light. We also offer a program called Safe Dates to teach teens and young adults how to have healthy relationships. We also have just formed a new sexual assault response team with our inaugural meeting to be held this Friday. This will be the first time in more than 5 years that we've had a sexual assault response team in Craven County. And I'm tremendously proud and excited that we're going to pull that together to reduce sexual violence and eliminate it in our communities. We also offer advocacy services. Advocacy services are offered to victims of sexual violence and their families. We all know that crime doesn't affect just the first victim that it encounters, but it has a ripple effect that will impact the friends, families, and community members around that person. We can go to the emergency room to assist a victim immediately after a sexual assault and be present with them if they wish during a sexual assault forensic examination. We can also offer law enforcement accompaniment when they do police interviews or other interrogations. We can accompany them to other medical appointments, court hearings, among many other services related to advocacy. That would include things like victim impact statements, assisting with victim compensation applications, relocation assistance, and other services. We also, of course, want to address the impact to mental health, and we offer mental health services. Our licensed, trained clinicians offer trauma-informed, trauma-focused therapy using a variety of modalities. EMDR is especially helpful for folks that have PTSD and anxiety, while TFCBT, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, is great for kids and their families. All of this mental health and supportive services through advocacy helps our individual clients recover and become more resilient as they go through the process of healing. Our progress is accounted for through reduction of their symptoms and also through reduction of violent crimes happening in our community. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that all of the services that I just described to you are provided to our clients and our communities at zero cost. Regardless of if a person has insurance or not, we will provide all of the services I just described at no cost to them. I would be happy to take your questions if you have any. And if you think of questions later, I would encourage and welcome you to reach out to me, stop by the office, send me an email, whatever works for you. And thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I have one question. Can you give a number to someone that's listening that may want to call you? Could you give that out tonight?
Yes, sir. I would love to. We do have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365 crisis line number. That's 252-635-7096. And if a person wanted to call our office during regular business hours, 8 to 5, to get additional information, 252-636-3381. We respond to calls immediately during business hour and within one business day if it happens to be after hours.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Ms. Gonzalez, I just want to take a moment to thank you for what you do and coming on to Promise Place. It's definitely needed in our community, and any way that I can support, please let me know.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate your support. Please visit our website.
Tell us about your major fundraiser in New Bern annually.
Thank you for asking that question. For 8 years, we have had an annual fundraiser called the Bern Bash. It is hosted by a local individual who volunteers her time and resources at her farm where we have our Barn Bash. Due to the COVID, we had to make a pivot last year to a virtual platform. So instead of having that face-to-face pig picking and good time that we usually do, we had to recreate that online. Because things were pretty uncertain this year, out of an abundance of caution, we elected to have it virtually again this year. Individuals will have an opportunity to bid on items that have been donated to us, and those funds will be used to support the services that we provide. We are also offering a 50-50 raffle ticket where folks can buy a ticket for $20 or buy 5 and get 1 free for $100. And if all of our tickets are sold, you would have the opportunity to win $20,000. We have that fundraiser every year. It is our main fundraiser, although we are hoping to diversify to a couple of other things for folks that may not be able to make it out to the farm.
Well, is it okay to mention who those people are that host that?
I would love to acknowledge them. Tommy and Wendy Batten, who many of you may know, graciously allow us to use their barn in past years. Like I said, this year and last year we had it online. And for those of you who don't know, Mr. Tommy just passed away. He has contributed a lot to our organization. And even in his passing, his family was thoughtful of our clients and the communities we served and asked that donations be made to our organization in lieu of flowers.
Well, I just, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but it's Tommy and Wendy, I mean, that's all they ever talked to me about was Promise Place.
They are next level human beings.
And, I mean, and losing Tommy, you know, Tommy was kind of bigger than life, and if anybody had the opportunity to know him, and he did recently pass, but I've worked with a lot of folks, and I've never worked with anybody who has the energy that Tommy and Wendy have to help cause like they do, and I just didn't want to mention that. And I want everybody, you know, Tommy being in prayers. He was a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. They have contributed untold hours and resources to supporting our organization, and we are eternally grateful for that support. They're just amazing human beings.
Well, thank you for coming up, and I'm sure you'll have a very successful fundraiser.
I do hope so. And again, please reach out if you have questions or want to know more about our services or referral process. I appreciate y'all letting me speak tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to item number 8.
Next item is a presentation by Draper Aiden and Amanda Olensalen on the EPA's Brownfields Grant Program, and also to consider a resolution authorizing submission of the Brownfields Grant application.
Good evening.
Evening, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and the Board of Aldermen, for giving me this opportunity to present about the EPA's Brownfields program. And if I'm not speaking loud enough, please let me know. This is in support of the city staff's desire to submit an application to EPA this fall to seek federal funding to assess and redevelop brownfields in the city. I'll move forward and give you an overview of the Brownfields program to begin with. We'll do a Brownfields 101 overview, which is essentially what is Brownfields, why do you need to go after this grant, what is the value of this grant, what sort of benefits come from it, a little bit about the EPA program, and also a little bit about the North Carolina State program, the types of fundings that are available, and at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them and respond. So why are we here? The city back in 2009 had submitted and successfully received grants from EPA to assess their brownfields and successfully completed that grant cycle in 2012. In that cycle, the city had assessed several properties, and many of those properties are part of the redevelopment that's been happening in the city over the last decade. And city staff would like to refresh that and resubmit a new application to get more federal funding in support of the 2020 redevelopment plan for the greater Five Points area. So quickly, what is a brownfield? Brownfield is any real property with possibilities of expansion, redevelopment, and reuse. And this could be your garden variety gas station, a strip mall. Typically, a big industry is what comes to mind when you think of a brownfield, a closed-out, dilapidated structure. It could really be anything. It could be a school. It could be an open land, which was once maybe a foundry, maybe a gas station, but where there is the perception or potential for chemical contaminants to be present, and it usually detracts from investors to invest on those kind of properties, because the concern associated with how much chemicals is out there can be too large, and sometimes these properties sit around and get mothballed for a really long time. EPA recognized this a long time back and decided to invest in these properties. So for the last 20 years or so, EPA puts out a competition at the fall or winter time frame, and applications are invited, and in support of those applications, city will be submitting one. And so this, we'll continue to look through that. This is an example of another brownfield site that you see on the screen. But how do you deal with brownfields? You typically, under this grant, for example, you'd identify the brownfields, so you'd go around studying the databases and preparing an inventory. You do site reviews and add to the list of brownfield sites. And once you have the inventory ready, you would prioritize those sites. And the priorities could be your priorities, where you want to see investment done and redevelopment done. And the city staff's intention is to get this grant to focus on the redevelopment area, the planned redevelopment area in the greater Five Points area. And once you prioritize those sites, you assess those sites, meaning complete environmental assessments, and then plan for redevelopment and remediation. And ultimately, this turns into taking mothballed properties and getting financial value out of it at the end of redevelopment. So how much money is available under the EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant Program? It's $500,000 of a single grant. So the value of the grant to the city would be $500,000. The best part of this grant is there is absolutely no match requirement. And it's, I think it's one of EPA's or federal government's best kept secrets. It is a very competitive grant program, but still having no match requirement and only a vision for redevelopment. It's a great tool to have in your redevelopment toolbox. What are the benefits of investing these grants towards redevelopment of brownfields? You essentially promote ecological responsibility and transform underutilized and unused properties. You revitalize challenged local economies, and that's part of what you're already doing. This would just be one tool in your toolbox which helps support that. It will foster reuse of existing infrastructure, and ultimately when properties are redeveloped, it creates job opportunities for the local population. And it, most importantly, restores environmental justice and quality of life, especially for neighborhoods that have long been subject to environmental injustice. And this year's EPA's grant application process intends to highlight significantly environmental justice as a priority item. And ultimately, this is just, like I said, one tool in your toolbox. Essentially, the redevelopment will come from having these assessments and planning completed, but then inviting other investors to come in or getting other sorts of grants and funds, both private and public, to redevelop your properties. These are some of the sites that we picked from your redevelopment plan, but they're only stock photos at this point. We have not invested a significant amount of time to shortlist any sites. That will be the city staff's priority and prerogative. We'll work with the city staff to assist with selection of sites and preparing the Brownfields assessment grant application. And what can be completed with those grants if the city is funded? Eventually, it will be the fall of 2022 when the funds will be released to the city. And you can complete all these tasks that you see on the screen. A phase 1 is a desktop type of environmental assessment, and a phase 2 is a more elaborate type of environmental assessment. The other kinds of assessments that you can complete are asbestos testing, lead-based paint testing, mold testing, even structural and geophysical assessments to see if there are kind of structural instabilities on a structure you want to reuse, or if there are hidden, buried subsurface structures. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open it up to any questions that you may have.
Anyone have questions?
Let's go.
Yeah, I think this is amazing.
Great.
So I was on the board when we did the one in 2011, 2012. We were in that time frame. And this will be just specific, though, because we did it in different areas of New Bern. This will be just specific to the redevelopment area. Is that correct?
Yes,
or the CNI? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, ma'am. That is the intent at this point.
To the
The city
CNI.
staff will have to finalize if there is any other area of focus, but the direction that we have heard from them is to focus on the redevelopment area.
So would this just be for city-owned properties or private-owned? So it's for privately owned properties. This grant would then pay for a phase 1 and a phase 2 if necessary?
It's for any property, city-owned or private-owned.
Anybody else? Is the initial, for the $500,000 grant, I know we'll be competing with a lot of other cities, et cetera, is if you ran into a atypical anomaly situation like a shingle mountain in Dallas, Texas or something, and you run into that and identify you got a real immediate real environmental problem, and you're stuck at 500,000. What do you do when something's assessed? Is this like a phase 1 or a phase 2?
That's a great question, Ms. Mayor. You're honing in right on the significant issue associated with this grant. It's always a concern that if you open up and assess a property, what do you find? And if you find, how do you deal with it? But the reality is, Brownfields program is set up not to go after Superfund sort of sites. And Superfund, you're pretty familiar with everyone. Those are the big hulking industries with lots of spilling chemicals that were the focus of federal investments in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Now, this program does not intend to support those kind of sites. So a brownfield, by definition, should not be a Superfund site, should not be a site that's under any kind of state or federal oversight or mandate. So it's highly unlikely that we will go after and assess a site that is a serious environmental concern. So I've been working with many communities on Brownfields program for nearly 20 years, and we are very careful in guiding the communities in selecting the Brownfield sites you want to run through the program. You do not want to pick a site that is the way you described it, it would not be a manageable site under this program. There is a different program for that, CERCLA and other programs, and then mandated programs. This would only focus on sites that have low environmental risk with high potential for redevelopment.
And it would
So
just
what do
be,
you- what do you
it's
do?
not just residential, it'd be both residential and commercial based on the couple of pictures I
Yes,
saw.
ma'am. It's primarily commercial, but it can
Primary.
also be residential.
Or have other questions, just.
So we just need to give direction that we support them, staff applying for this grant?
Yes.
I'm in support.
Yeah, I'm in support as well.
Always good to get money from somewhere else,
We-
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Or
do have a
just
resolution
revitalizing,
there. Get
period.
ready. There's a resolution when you get ready for it. if you want.
I do have a question. I do have a question, sir.
Yes,
For the
ma'am.
925 Broad Street location, I know this is for a grant application, but I know you should have some idea. What do you propose of going in at that particular site? Is that for,
That's the former Days Motel property,
right?
correct? It is one of the target sites that the city has been considering. So what we would do there to begin with, EPA would expect that a phase 1 and a phase 2 environmental assessment be done, so you'd get an environmental bill of health for that property. And also, EPA is encouraging new grantees over the last 5+ years to focus on redevelopment planning. So some of these funds can actually be used to plan for redevelopment of that site.
So I don't know if I heard that right, but if you did a brownfield study, is that phase 1 or phase 2 or what? What is it?
So under Brownfields, when you do an environmental assessment, the first step would be a phase 1 assessment.
Okay.
And then a
Yeah,
phase 2 if
historical
it's
maps and
required.
all that and soil samples. Well, I mean, it's interesting that probably some of the more marginal properties are the ones that don't qualify under this grant.
I couldn't hear you, Mayor.
I mean, you could have properties that need immediate remediation
Oh, for
that would
remediation.
not qualify for this grant.
It could still qualify as long as it's not a site that's under a state petroleum program or state RECRA, the program that oversees waste sites, or under CERCLA. It could still qualify. It doesn't. But this grant money is not intended to actually remediate sites. It's only for assessments. There is another grant specifically for remediation. It's much more competitive, very few dollars out there. The goal is that EPA expects that 90% of sites really need assessment, and at the end of the assessment, what you realize is the level of remediation you need is fairly basic, if at all required, and you can read out these properties much more quicker. But if a site needs remediation, that's a whole different
So,
funding source.
I just have one more question, like, if you're doing wetlands and you get a delineation done and then the Corps signs off on it, you're done, let's say, hypothetically. In this case, if you get a brownfield study done and the bank, first thing on commercial or industrial might want a phase 1, does this stamp it to where it doesn't need any further investigation or analysis?
We obviously, we don't have that level of authority. You are allowed to invest these funds in your communities and have these phase 1s and phase 2s in hand in support of an investor or your investment in redeveloping a site. But we don't have the authority that the NCDEQ or EPA has to stamp and say, this is it, it's the final thing. But for a buyer, when you do a phase 1, it is your all-appropriate inquiry protection of your liabilities. So if you end up buying a property, typically a commercial property, and if you go to a bank for a loan, the first thing they ask you is a phase 1, and it costs money. So investors are reluctant to invest in properties where they have to do a phase 1 and maybe even do a phase 2. So that's the value this program brings to
Hey, Mr. Davis, I'm kind of asking if this gives the gold seal of approval in lieu of a phase 1, or if a person has private property and this is part of the program, does a bank still call for phase 1?
It does pay for it. So if the bank, this is how it went the last time. I assume it's in the same process.
Yes, ma'am.
But they identify sites that they want to go to. They ask the private property owner, May they do a phase one assessment? If they approve, they've got a phase one, they get a copy of that report. So this grant actually pays for that. If they deem that they have to do a phase two based on the phase one findings, they will pay, the grant may pay for the phase two. So that's usually the expense. Usually, phase one could be $1,500, $2,000, depending on the property. The phase two is more expensive. And just, again, depending on the size of it.
Well, I don't believe it, just sound me like they were going to qualify properties that didn't fall into phase two categories. But
No.
That was, I
You
missed
got
the
the
best
question.
spoke there.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing is the $500,000 in the discovery, as long as the expense don't go over that.
That is correct, sir. The total value of this grant is $500,000.
As long as they don't go over 500,000.
That's all EPA will release. And on any specific site, you're not allowed to spend more than $150,000. So
Right.
that's for every individual site.
Okay.
Okay, is the board going to take action on this tonight?
Yes, Mayor, if there's no other questions, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution authorizing a submission of a grant application. Authorizing the submission of a grant application.
Second.
No,
Go ahead.
in case there was anything, questions on that.
Yeah, well, we have motion and second. Is there any questions of Amanda or anybody? Do you want to say anything?
No, I just wanted to thank Sri for his time
Yeah.
in coming down today. I think that was a great overview of the program, so thank you again for your time.
Okay, we'll have a roll call starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle?
Yes?
Alderwoman Harris?
Yes.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Any other items associated with item number 8?
No, sir, we're ready to move to the next item. Ready to move to the next one.
We're going to do number 9?
Yes, number 9. This item is for the city attorney to lead a discussion on guidelines for elected and appointed boards, commissions, and committees using personal or official social media platforms.
Mayor, members of the board, this is our first introduction with you to a draft set of guidelines that we hope will be helpful to you as well as appointed officials who serve on our various boards and committees. These social media issues come in 3 broad categories. One are the laws that apply to elected and appointed officials. The other area are the laws that apply to employees. And the third area is broadly the administration of social media with respect to staff and administration and what you as a board want to see the city engage in for its social media platforms. Tonight, we're just talking about the first bucket of issues. Those are the guidelines and laws that apply to elected and appointed officials. The first takeaway from this document, these are guidelines offered in the spirit of helping you understand what your legal obligations are with respect to social media. The simple point being, don't break the law. What laws are there to break? Generally, they are public records laws. That's the big one you're going to deal with and worry about. The others are disclosing confidential information or employee privacy records. There's a fourth category of how one goes about editing your social media accounts, which really ties back into the public records law. So this is all done in an effort to help give you a general sense of what the rules are that regulate social media. I will tell you that this is an issue that those of us that represent local governments for a living have been struggling with for a great many years. The body of law is evolving. There are only a handful of cities that have tried to put forth guidelines. New Bern will be among 3, 4, or 5 cities in the state that's tried to offer some helpful guidelines to public officials. Lots of reasons for why it's so difficult. The law is quickly changing, and even within the law, there are so many subtleties and shades of these issues that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to give you meaningful do's and don'ts. The silly version is, don't break the law. How do I not do that? That's complicated. So, but this is better than nothing. I've been in the majority of my colleagues for a great many years in not doing this, but I've become convinced that a little something is better than nothing, largely so that I can make you aware that there are traps for the unwary. And when in doubt, reach out to us to be helpful to you. I'm not going to read these guidelines to you. I will just tell you broadly in terms of those categories of things to worry about. There are official city social media pages, right? The city of New Bern. Those official pages that I'm calling official are those endorsed by the city, managed and administered by the city, right? The city can regulate those, and you as a board can dictate how those work. I'm much less worried about those websites because we have paid professionals that archive, monitor, know the rules about what can be deleted, what can't be deleted. If you delete it, does it have to be archived? All those questions we've got people to deal with. The trickier issues are your personal social media platforms, and those can come in two flavors. Those that you do as an individual, as a citizen, as a parent, a grandparent, here's my grandchild, here's my pet. Those are your personal pages. And then you may have a page that you call your official page. This is my official alderperson page. The rules are different for both of those sets of platforms, but you can get into trouble by commingling content on both of those pages. For example, it's the easy way to think about this is like your personal emails. You've heard my speech before that we archive and keep all of your emails with the City of New Bern org tagline, right? Those are your official emails. Every email you send out on that server using that email is a public record that IT captures and maintains forever. What we don't capture and maintain, don't have the ability to, are your personal email accounts. If you have a Gmail account, that is your personal account. However, if you send out public information, city information, on those personal emails, you've just now made that personal email, that one email, a public record that you individually have an obligation to keep and maintain forever. Social media works exactly the same way as those emails, right? Just because you use your personal email doesn't mean your public city business content in that email is now private. The question is always, what's the content, not where did it come from, okay? Social media works the same way. So on your private page, if we've got grandkids and children and loved ones and vacations, and then a city news bulletin, that city news bulletin entry on your personal page is now city business content. And when that happens, other rules start to apply to that private page. These guidelines are there to help you with those situations. They also apply to your, quote, official pages. If you have an official page or whatever you want to call it where you just try to conduct city business, which is what I strongly recommend to you. If you want to discuss city business in a social media platform, create an official page. Just like we have your official email, create your official page where that content is maintained. That way you know it's always there. You can manage it easy. You don't want to commingle city content onto your personal page. It will make life much more difficult for you. So that's the broad speech. I've got you some draft guidelines there to read and think about. Tonight is not for adopting anything. What we ultimately want to do is have a resolution adopting these guidelines, largely so we have a record that everyone is aware of what these rules are, and to ask questions if you are in doubt. These guidelines don't regulate the content of what you say, okay? Really important to understand. Just because you are an elected official does not mean that you lose your First Amendment right to say whatever you want to say. People may like it, They may not like it. It might be true. It might be false. You have a right to say whatever words you want to say, regardless of your capacity as an individual or a public official. That said, there are some rules that can apply to those First Amendment words that you speak. And those have to do with the employee privacy records, trade secrets. There are some obvious exceptions to the First Amendment that apply to everyone, regardless of your capacity as a citizen or elected official. So, with that in mind, you've got your draft. I can already tell you there's a few little tweaks that I want to make even to this draft. Happy to hear from each of you. Reach out to me. It's going to be easier for us to have a more robust conversation and go through your examples one-on-one or in small groups than in this kind of setting. But I want you to have the first draft just so you can get a sense of where we are trying to get so that you have something to help you navigate what you're trying to do so that we don't get in a jam. Like I said, it's easy when we're dealing with the official websites. Staff has me at their disposal all the time. I'm not with you in your homes in the middle of the night when people are doing social media things and commenting, and there's no way to give you any direction or counsel. So you are largely on your own in that sphere. So that's why I've tipped into the camp of giving you something more than nothing.
Thank you. I appreciate the work that you guys did to pull these guidelines together. You know, people not being in office or even in the first time, it's really hard to be able to navigate those two waters and being personal and having your personal account and your professional account. So I appreciate it, and I look forward to getting these guidelines set in stone so that we all kind of have somewhere to start from. So thank you for your work and the staff's work and everybody.
Yes, ma'am. So we will be, reach out to me over the next couple of weeks, and you'll see this on an upcoming agenda to get these finalized.
Scott?
Yes, ma'am.
Attorney Davis, I have a question for you. I have looked over this, but not really in detail. But can you answer this question for me? Say, for instance, I'm an elected official, and someone invites me to come on to their show and talk about a particular subject that may relate to the city. And I know I have my First Amendment rights, but how will I not be in violation of answering certain questions if it's city-related business, or if it's just personal business, or about their show? How may I be not in violation of federal and state laws?
Good question. The easy response to that is you are always free to be interviewed wherever you would like, in whatever format you would like. That's easy. No worries there. The twist comes in when you are providing the platform for that content. If it is your personal official page, then all the rules start applying to you. If you're a guest on any other platform, it's the platform's responsibility to comply with the law.
So you're saying if you have a platform that you use, then that platform just needs to make sure that they're, like, keep the record of what they have until, is it 7 years or is it for?
Till the end. That depends.
Now,
That's a good
what
question.
if you keep it and then you forward it to Brenda and put it, is there a way to do it that way? Where
Yes,
if there
ma'am.
is content, you send it and then the city officially has it? So
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's not to belabor the point, but my advice to you on your personal email accounts is to copy yourself with your official email.
Okay.
So if a citizen happens to have your private email address and sends you a city question, you want to respond promptly, just copy yourself, blind copy or copy yourself, because IT will pick that up as it goes through the city's system.
Okay.
You can do the same thing with about any social content you want. You're always safe to try to loop in the city with tags or anything so that the city can help archive that information.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't want to get in the business of having people tag the city, because that's extra work on personal platforms. I'm just saying if you have something that you've done put out on your Alderman page or it trickled over to your personal, we should just be able to capture it and then send it so the city has it, so
Yes, ma'am.
there's no extra work involved on the city's part.
That would be preferable, yes, ma'am.
Alderman Odom.
Yes, sir. Scott, I have two questions. One, when we receive an email on our official city email account, do we have to maintain that in our personal desktop or our personal email box, or is that archived through IT?
I'm 90% sure that's archived automatically through IT. Yes, yes. That's why I say, if you copy yourself, and I know some of you have this habit of just adding your City of New Bern email to all of your responses, if they're on a personal account, it will always go through our system and we'll have it.
Because I mean, we get advertisements and junk mail all the time, and I've got a folder, I just put it in. So
Sure.
if we don't have to keep that, it probably from IT resources, we probably need to purge that on our individual accounts. Right?
Yes, sir, and IT may scrub that for you, and that is one of the exceptions that you can delete advertising. That is not a public record.
The second thing is, I know it doesn't necessarily apply here, but more about the official city pages that you talked about earlier. In the future, once this thing moves forward, I would like to see us have some discussion as a board about our policy and what we want to see with various departments. Because I know we have our official city page that Colleen manages, then we have a fire department page, a police department page, a parks and recreation page, a utilities page, and it creates a lot of disjointedness, if you will, because you've got our official city page, to me, should be where official information is distributed to the public. And if somebody happens to follow that page, but they don't follow the electric page, and there's an outage, and they don't see that, it should flow through the city page. That's my opinion.
Yes, sir, amen. We will be coming to you in a matter of weeks or a month, looking for that direction. Staff really needs some direction on these issues. And it's all that you're saying is in the spirit of providing helpful and useful information to the citizenry, right? We're all in favor of that. We just need to do it in an organized fashion because all these various platforms and pages are simply opportunities to make mistakes. And the mistakes can be, best case, hugely distracting, best case.
Who maintains all of the other pages, like the fire department? And
That's one of the troublesome administration issues. It's at the department level currently, and you
Okay.
have some turnover, and everyone's trying their best, but it would, in my view, I think the answer will ultimately be, it would be easier to have that centralized and
Yeah.
maintained probably through one page rather than a dozen. But
Yeah.
we'll be back in front of you with some of those types of, we call them macro issues. What platforms do we want to be on? There are now a dozen at least. Which do we want to be on? And in what format do we want to be on those platforms? How much content? How much one-way communication, two-way communication? All those are issues that we really need to get our arms around because unfortunately it's turned into a situation where we have lots more opportunities for failure than for success, even though our hearts are in the right place.
right.
Ms. Scott, I got a question for you. What about Facebook? And I know the police department and fire department and utilities and everybody uses a lot for press releases.
Right.
Is there any issues doing that?
Yes, sir, and that's kind of part of what we call this macro issue. Is that the best way to get the message out in an organized, consistent fashion in a way that we don't make mistakes or miscommunicate or have a different vetting process? So that's exactly what we're trying to get our arms around and find the most efficient way that we can be responsive to the departments and make sure we get their information out, but do it in a way that gets the most eyeballs, which is the purpose, and do it in a way that's properly and legally managed so that we don't have a mistake in the process.
Well, hopefully you bring it together and for each department, there's one person, because I love seeing the stuff that police say and the fire department. I love the individuality, but I understand bringing it under one. So I hope that even if we do bring it together, we still do get that consistency of things going out there, parks and recs and stuff, because people do go to social media to find out what's going on,
For
and not
sure.
necessarily just the main website. They go to the individual one. So good luck on working that out, and I'm here to,
You'll see us again.
yes.
Anybody else? Okay, at this time, go to the next item. Number 2.
Mayor, next item is to conduct a public hearing on the rezoning of 356 Rocky Run Road and consider adopting a statement of zoning consistency or inconsistency and consider adopting an ordinance to rezone. Michael Raines has requested to rezone 2 parcels that total approximately 77.72 acres. The parcels are in the ETJ area located at 356 Rocky Run Road and are further identified as tax parcel IDs 8-210-031 and 8-210-029. The current zoning is R20 Rural Residential and zoning as A5F Agricultural Forestry District is sought. The Planning and Zoning Board unanimously approved the request at its September 7th meeting. After conducting a public hearing, the board is asked to adopt a statement of zoning consistency or inconsistency, followed by consideration of an ordinance to rezone the property if it is deemed consistent with the city's land use plans and nearby land uses.
Hank Foster. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. City manager did a fine job of running down the basic stats for the project. It's a rezoning request, 77 acres of land from R20 to A5F. Oops. There's your site, located along Rocky Run Road there, extending back. Existing zoning is R20. It's our rural residential district, designed to accommodate low-density single-family dwellings. Minimum square footage for those lots are 20,000 square feet. The request for A5F, it's an agricultural forestry district. It's designed to promote forestry operations and low-density residential uses. Landfills, quarries, livestock, and similar uses that would be allowed in A5 or other agricultural zoning districts are specifically prohibited in this district, so it restricts it really to a more forestry, low-density residential type development. There's a general survey of your A5F uses. Single-family detached, mobile duplexes, mobile homes are not allowed in this district. Horse stables, fully enclosed veterinarian clinics, ag uses excluding livestock, forestry operations, open-air markets, and commercial greenhouse operations. Adjacent zoning is residential, a mix between R10 and R20, though you will find that there's other ag to the west, and also commercial, so it's a typical hodgepodge out in that area of town. The Cameron Regional Land Use Plan calls this an urban transition area, which does provide for future intensive urban development. However, the site is also designated as has a low to medium development suitability rating. That's due to poor soil conditions on the majority of the site. The property is also located outside of any floodplain. The City of New Bern does not serve this site with any utilities. The request was heard on September the 7th by the Planning and Zoning Board, and it was approved unanimously. If you have any questions, I will take them.
Does the board have questions? We have no questions. I'm going to go ahead and open a public hearing. Anybody like to come forward, ask questions, make any comments or statements concerning this, you can do it at this time. Yes, sir, come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Marshall Ballard. I'm a resident of Rocket Run community, and we would like, as a community, to meet with the owner of this property to find out his plans and, set up a meeting with the community for Q&A, if it's all possibility. Okay?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Cheryl Foy, and I lived in the Rocky Run community for almost 65 years. I recently built a home there in the Rock Run community, and I would like to know how the rezoning will affect the community overall. I would also like to know what will be done on the land and for how long. Will our taxes and water bill be affected? Will those things be raised? Would there be an increase of traffic? And I'm also concerned about pollution and the environment. What type of chemicals will be used on the land? How will it affect our children in the future? I grew up in the Rocky Run community, and my uncles and people in that Rocky Run community used it as farmland, where they grew tobacco. And a majority of the people in the community where tobacco was raised developed cancer. I'm just interested in wanting to know exactly how long the rezoning will be in effect and what will happen in the future. Because the community I live in is a safe community, and I'm concerned about the traffic, and just like I said, I'm concerned about the environment and the climate change. So I hope you, the members, board members, will take in consideration my community, where I was raised, and what we plan to do with it and how it will affect our children in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Michael Raines. I'm the landowner of the property. If there's any other questions or public comments, I'm happy to address those. But as far as the future plans for the property, I've got a timber management plan that I provided to the city, and my plan is to follow that timber use plan and manage the property for timber uses. As was pointed out, the soils are not good for development. I have no intention of developing land, building houses, or anything like that. That's why I'm asking for the zoning to be more in line with timber production and use. There will be no environmental concerns. If anything, it'll improve the land being managed for pines properly. Traffic will be probably less traffic, except for, in 15 years they'll thin it. Another 10 years the timber will be thin, and then 30 so years or so it'll be clear cut. But that's just normal timber management plans, and that's my plan. Are there any other questions that the community has? My intent is not to have any negative effect whatsoever on the community. Does anybody have any questions?
Question for public hearing. Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to come up under the public hearing and make any comments, questions, statements about this item?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Mr. Kinsey, Jim,
Yes.
something?
Scott? Yes, sir.
With the request of the citizens that was asked them to speak with him about the use of the land, and then he given a summary of a breakdown what his plans are. Could you give me a summary of what you think you might understand to help this situation go smoothly for everyone?
Yes, sir. I'll start with the law, and then I'll finish with an opinion. The law is in rezoning, that the board is to consider all potential uses in the zone, right? We don't focus on what the applicant promises to do, wants to do, expects to do. You consider all the possible uses of the new zone in making your, what's called a legislative decision. Right now, it is zoned R20. That is residential lots no less than 20,000 square feet. So right this very minute, the property owner could go fill that property with houses as a matter of right, meaning no one can stop him. Okay?
Correct.
He's asking to convert that to agricultural, which is the lowest burden on the property in terms of our zoning, right? Industrial is our heaviest use, dirtiest, highest traffic use. And it goes all the way down through commercial to light commercial to high density residential, low density residential, and it ends with a forest, agricultural farmland. So that's what he's proposing, to take it from a low density residential all the way down to farming. That does have some residential uses and other possibilities, but he's pushing his way down the spectrum of burdens on the land, which generally people perceive to be a good thing if you are worried about development, right? Typically, people are trying to take agricultural zone land and get the density up so that they can develop it, make more money from their land. So that's the law. You are to consider all the possibilities with this zone. Nothing against Mr. Raines at all. I have no doubt that he's telling you exactly what he plans to do. And I have no doubt he's going to do that. But the law is you have to consider all possibilities because things do change. As a practical matter, having said all of that, one of the big tells in this application is the soils are simply unsuitable for most any other thing other than growing pine trees. So there is a stopgap. If you are a resident in that community, you know of the poor soils and poor drainage in that area, which does in fact limit development. One of the other questions that was asked is what's going to happen and how long does this last? Zoning lasts to the end of the world until it's changed. Okay? So once this is done, the property owner can come back years later, 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, ask for a change, or it may never change from its current zone. Right? There's no time limit on it. That help?
Help me.
Alderman Odom.
Scott, I think you just answered one of them maybe. How soon can the property owner come back and ask for it to be zoned to something different?
That is a fine question, and I don't know the answer to that.
If it's rejected, it's a year they have to wait, right?
It is. The facts have to change, but if they wanted to change it back, I don't know the answer to that. It's not long. I mean, it would be 6 to 12 months if it's anything.
Okay. And then my second question is probably for you, Jeff. I know this is the ETJ, one of my favorite subjects, which I really wish we would get rid of. Who chose the initial zoning to say it was R10 or R20 as it is now?
No, that would have been a legislative decision by the board when it was included in the ETJ.
Do we know what time frame that, Scott, maybe that happened?
It was in the early 90s.
Early 90s, okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ballard and Ms. Ford, does that somewhat give you a little bit more information on the zone, asking for the rezoning of it to A5F?
I reckon the bottom line is he just wants to cut timber, right?
Pretty much.
I mean, that's what he wants to do. He wants to timber it. And you'll probably timber it and plant it back, correct, Martin? Excuse me. Mike?
Yeah, and the current zoning requires, one of these parcels is only 178 feet wide. And the way I read the current rules with cutting pine trees down is you have to leave a 50-foot buffer on either side. So when talking to the forestry consultants, they were astonished that timber plans wouldn't just follow the city ordinance. In fact, the city would have an ordinance with narrow strips like this saying you could only cut 78 feet out in the middle, which they said is virtually impossible to manage for pine trees. So that's the reason I'm asking for less impactful zoning, is so that I can properly manage it for pine production. It's the same way that you'll see a lot of the rural areas that are in city limits or Weyerhaeuser land. They are managed the same way. I think for that reason, you don't have to, it's specifically for this tract. One of the tracts is 78 feet wide. If you can't cut timber on 100 of the 178 feet, you can't manage the timber. Pine trees won't grow in that narrow strip when you've got tall ones around it. That's the reason I'm asking for the zoning.
Thanks.
I just, quick comment, Ms. Foy, you had asked about the taxes. The city of Newburgh doesn't tax that property, so that would be up to the county. We do control the zoning, but we don't control the taxing of that area. So how it would impact you would be hard to tell. If he's taking it down a grade, he's not building houses, I can't imagine that it would impact the surrounding homes. But then again, I'm not a tax appraiser, so I wouldn't know how to answer. I just wanted to clarify that that is not in the city of New Bern taxing jurisdiction. Wanted to clarify that. Can you come up to the thing if you can speak?
The board needs to either reopen the public hearing or make some type of
Motion to reopen the public hearing
motion
if
to
you want to take
allow
more
public
comment.
comment.
I'll make that
after.
motion.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Does everybody understand the motion to allow discussion by the public again? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Sir, you can come forward.
I was going to say, will you let Ms. Foy, she had a question, let her do that, and then we can answer that and have you come up.
I also noticed since I've been back in Rocky Run that I see a lot of wildlife. I see deers, I see rabbits. Someone said they heard a bear. And they're coming out because we're just tearing down their habitat. So that's another concern. So we have to take in consideration the wildlife. I mean, where would they go? Well, you know, it's just amazing what we've done in our community and what we've done on this earth to disrupt the wildlife. And that's another concern that I have.
Thank you.
My name is Edward Mallison, and I have property out in Rocky Run. And the gentleman came up and he stated that the only thing that you could do with the property is grow pine trees. The pine trees are already there. There are no pine trees on there that's large enough to cut for timber. They are very young trees that's there. And as the lady stated earlier about wildlife being there and being disrupted, I see no place where this would benefit the community by changing the zoning, because of the fact that the trees are not large enough to do anything with. They're too young to be cut. You couldn't even cut them for toothpicks because they're just that small. So he misled you by saying that's the only thing you could grow. They already grow it. That's all it is out there is in that particular area that he's talking about. That's the only thing that's there is pine trees. So to say that you can't do nothing, that he's going to do all this with the pine trees, wrong.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mr. Ballard. Marshall, could you come to the podium, please? Based on the information that Mr. Range has given us, and you said you would need to speak with him.
Alderman Candlelight, it's hard for me to hear. Is the
Okay.
problem you can turn up the volume some of it?
Yes, sir, I
Talk
can.
about it?
I can turn it up.
Okay.
the information he just given us, what he's going to do with the property, is that enough information for you to understand that he's just planning on cutting trees down and just maybe coming back 30 years later planting because of the soil? I don't know what your thinking is right now, what you want to speak with him about. I would like to sort of understand that, where I know what's going on both sides, where I can make a decision.
Well, like I was asking, if they could set up a meeting where all the residents from the Rocky Run community could hear and have like a Q&A. And then I guess we could bring it back to the board of Aldermen. Man, my voice. Is that a possibility?
I don't know the rules on that one there. I have to go to the city attorney on that there.
Well, you can defer your decision if you like. This is an ETJ, so there really isn't an alderman responsible for that area. But you can either approve the zoning change, deny the zoning change, or delay your decision. Those are your real options.
Would it be a table of the motion, or tabling the item?
Yeah, you would table the item to next meeting or some date certain.
Well, he's already stated what he wanted to do. He wants to timber it.
But he also just asked, can the residents speak with him before what he just told us tonight? So he wanted more people to come out to participate in what's going on.
We're still in public.
Pardon me?
We're still in public hearing, so do we need to?
We're not in public hearing, we are in a motion second that was approved that you are allowing public questions to be asked.
Okay.
So we're not in a
So,
public hearing.
in the discussion, when it comes to this, is there any laws in regards to how soon you can cut a pine tree down?
No, ma'am.
Okay, because I was going to say, I didn't know, the gentleman was saying that they're not big enough to cut down or timber down, so I was checking on that.
Mr. Alderman Odom, do you have a question?
Go ahead, sir. Do you have something?
Repeat it again?
Do you have something to say before I go?
Hey, you guys got told a lot, man.
Do you have anything to say? You had your hand up. I didn't want to interrupt you if you had something to say next.
I still can't.
Did you have more to say?
Do you have anything else to say, Uncle Marshall?
Oh, no, that was basically about it. The reason I put that up, a couple of years ago, you guys met it, not you guys, but the person that bought property or wanted to buy property, had property in Rocky Run, they met with the residents at the church. And the people at the church, I mean, they had questions and things like that. So I thought maybe you could do the same. That was in the past, that was about 8-9 years ago.
Let's do this. That reference that you're referring to, it was R20, I believe Mr. Dunn owned some property. He wanted to rezone it to R10. He wanted a higher density type of home development, and the board did not allow that and retained R20 at that time. I think, Mr. Ruggieri, could you come up and procedurally tell us from the blue signs going up and the noticing exactly when Mr. Raines first wanted to rezone something up to and prior to the zoning board approval, procedurally, could you make sure that the public understands the process and that there was quite a bit of time in there, even during the zoning period, when this notice could have allowed that discussion, et cetera?
Yeah, so with any rezoning in the city or the ETJ, there is public notification requirements. We are required to notify all property owners within 100 feet of the boundary of the proposed rezoning, and also post a sign on the property visible from the right-of-way. So we do that usually about 2 weeks before the meeting. And that happens with every rezoning and final plats and general plans also. So a lot of our land use decisions that we see that get before the board have been properly noticed by our ordinance, and also it's consistent with state statute requirements also for public notice.
I mean, did we have any public speak at the Planning and Zoning Board?
No, ma'am.
So no public, no comments were made?
No, ma'am.
Well, Jeff, let me ask you, it's currently zoned residential, is that right?
That's right.
I mean, can't he go in there and cut trees as if he's gonna build houses?
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought.
And why
Well,
does he-
I think you mentioned that vegetative
Pardon me?
buffer.
Why does he need the AF then, if he can go right down?
Because he's not building houses, he
Because
just
he
wants
wants
to
to
cut
be
his
able
trees,
to grow
but
them again.
I mean, he could technically go in there under the current zoning and cut the trees, is that correct?
He can cut trees in relation to a development permit if he has a subdivision approved. We can go forward and move forward with land development activities, furtherance of his proposed development plan. However, what Mr. Range was referring to is there is a section of our code that specifically address timbering on residentially zoned properties. And that's where the buffering comes in. So if you want to go in and timber a property that's zoned residential, there is a other set of requirements that landowners has to follow, and that's with the buffering and that. So in order to get away from that buffering, as he said earlier, which renders one of his parcels useless for timbering, you go to this, he's requesting this A5F zoning, which would then allow him to timber to the property line consistent with the zoning requirements.
Alderman Odom, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, Michael, you said you had a timber management company come in. Could you just share with the public and the residents what their plan is? Obviously, they're not going to bring all the equipment in there to log if there's nothing there worthwhile right now, right?
That's correct. There's 77 total acres there, and some of it, from the timber crews I got, some of it is somewhere between 30 years old, and some of it, maybe what they're referring to on the front of one of the parcels, the front 10 acres or so was clear cut about 12, 15 years ago. And then there's been some that the right-of-way underneath power lines is cut, so then there are some younger in the front of that. But part of the wildlife, part of the timber management plan includes management for wildlife. And so I'm following all that. My intent's to have it in land use is timber land use for the county. And then there are certain restrictions that require me to follow the wildlife and timber management plans to have it in that type of land use. So there are restraints on what I can do with it as far as the county is concerned with having it in land use for timber land use.
Okay, thank you.
So there are some restraints, but environmental management for wildlife is also part of what's taken into consideration.
Ma'am, you can come on up and answer a question if you'd like.
Hi, so my name is Amanda Hurst, and I just have a really quick question. I'm more of a black and white straight shooter. So if we were to get it rezoned, and excuse me if I'm not too familiar with all the jargon, but if we were to get that specific area rezoned to, what is it, R5, I believe it is?
A5.
A5.
A forestry.
I got you. Can he then come in and, as it has a general survey of allowed uses, build single-family detached homes if we were to rezone it to that specific zone? Is it like a yes or no?
Yes, but he can do it
So
now.
yes, he can do
He
that.
can do it right now as well.
It would be the same standard, the R20 standard.
Right.
But he can come in and build single-family homes
Yes, ma'am.
if we were to rezone it.
He can do it now, they're
He
saying.
can do it now without the rezoning.
So he wants to get it changed to agricultural, but you can't, you could still build, Jeff, you could still build if it's zoned A5F, residential as well?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the requirements to build residential in the A5F zoning district are the same
Okay.
as the R20 district.
Okay,
So if his intent was to build homes, he wouldn't need the land use change.
okay.
So I just want to understand, the only reason for the land use change is to harvest the timber, period. That's what I'm hearing.
And it sounds like there's a staggered process, which is years because of the growth. So I still think that there will be trees there for the wildlife, and I'm assuming, and I know for me, just when we have these rezonings, I mean, it's not necessary that we as the board always receive the information on what's gonna happen, because that's not part of the protocol. So I personally don't know what was going to be happening until Mr. Michael decided to let us know. But I feel like if it was approved by the planning and zoning, and there was no questions in that department, and they passed it unanimously, I think that I'm definitely gonna support it, because it's not anything that he can't do now with building houses, and he doesn't wanna do that. He just wants to timber the land and manage the pond. So, and I think that with that, and you're stating on record in front of everybody that you're going to go by those rules and regulations, and also make sure that there is protocol and everything in place for the wildlife that's there, so that they don't go without a home. So thank you for that information.
Are we in a public hearing? We're not, right?
We're not public hearing.
Oh, we made the motion to close it.
Can I, if there's no more questions, I'd make a motion to adopt a statement of zoning consistency for the rezoning of 356 Rocky Run Road.
And
Second.
Okay.
Okay, you have a motion and second. Is there discussion? Point of clarification, Madam Clerk, we did close the public hearing.
You did.
Yes. Okay, any other questions, or let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey. Yes. Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Mayor, I'd now like,
Part two.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Part two.
I'd like to make a motion, we adopt the ordinance to rezone 356 Rocky Run Road from R20 Rural Residential to A5F Agricultural Forestry District.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey. Yes. Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries. Any other items associated with number 10? Let's go to item number 11.
Mayor, the next item is for our Director of Public Utilities to provide an update on the city's grant award to purchase and install 2 electric vehicle fast charging stations. Colleen, do you have the remote?
Yes, I do not have a presentation.
You don't have a presentation? Okay. I guess we'll go with that.
Good night.
It's on the drive.
I didn't hear.
Do you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah,
You can give us the cliff notes if you want. I said you can give us the cliff notes.
Yes, yes. Well, good evening. Welcome to the rapidly emerging world of electrical vehicle charging. I mentioned this back in February or March when we had our workshop, that it would be an emerging challenge. And I just thought I'd take this evening and reintroduce you to it, take a little bit deeper dive. Pardon me. I'm not asking for any action tonight. I just want to educate you and maybe get back some good ideas from you folks on how we should proceed in the future. Overall, electrical vehicle charging and electrical vehicle technology is being largely driven by many factors in this country, such as federal, state policies, mandates, and subsidies. Environmental concerns and stewardship are also impacting this technology as well as large capital investments by the private sectors. And there's a growing interest by the consumer market. As a result, it will have an impact on electric utilities, and we need to be able to support electric vehicle chargers because it is very, very real. And it will have a very real impact on our utility as well as the grid across the country. I believe the utility and the industry needs to be proactive to avoid being ill-prepared as it emerges. Large-scale adoption will most likely create stress on the bulk electric system as well as on the local distribution system. Also, even low and moderate adoption may negatively impact insufficient reg structures that we may have to support vehicle charging. So what do we know today?
electrical vehicle charging and consumer interest is advancing. There's large capital investments being made, as I mentioned, by the automotive industry, as well as other supporting industry. What's driving that investments? You would think that they really believe it's going to happen, or maybe there's subsidies. I don't know, but they're rolling these things out. We can anticipate a need to support both private charging and public charging. So private being at home, behind the meter, where you're charging your own vehicles, and public charging, maybe replacing the Shell station and public points of delivery of electricity for that market. Thank you so much. No, that's good. We should also be careful not to compete against ourselves as we roll out this technology and support it. We need to check, make sure our rate schedules are most likely, whether they're sufficient or insufficient for charging. And we need to double check those things. We should also be careful not to burden our other ratepayers and non-EV adopters as this technology rolls out and as we try to support it as an industry. Across the country, DC fast charging and state averages are running between 30 to 45 cents per kilowatt hour, and in some cases, this is not enough to cover the cost of service. So with that said, I'll take a sidestep here into an introduction to electric vehicle charging and help you kind of get a visual or understanding of what's going on with these different chargers. Level 1 and level 2 are basically home charging type of scenarios, and they probably will require at least, will they require one per vehicle depending on your scheduling needs. So if you had 2 vehicles at the house and they weren't able to be charged at the same schedule, or they needed to be charged at the same schedule, you need 2 of these. So level 1, it's 120 volts, about 16 amps, about 1.9 kW. It's equivalent to almost half a clothes dryer in load, or 26 crock pots. You can get about 3 to 5 miles in an hour charge. You need a $200 adapter to get you started. There's probably no infrastructure costs or installation costs necessary to get you up and running. Level 2, you double the voltage, double the current. Your kilowatts goes up to about 7, and it's about equivalent to 2 electric clothes dryers and 97 crock pots. You get about 10 to 20 miles on a 1 hour charge. Charging unit's going to cost you about $1,000. And installation cost of that charging unit average across the country is about $1,200 bucks. DC fast charging, which is what we just got a grant for and which we have installed down at the Red Bear parking lot. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a minute. This is a game changer. This is double the level 2 voltage, so 480 volts, about 104 amps, 50 kW. It's equivalent to about 17 electric clothes dryers or 694 crock pots. It's a lot of crock pots. You can get about, the manufacturers are saying about an 80% charge in about 30 minutes. This is all subjective to the vehicle and the age of the battery, so don't hold me to these numbers. Get you about 200 miles. Charging unit costs about $36,000. Installations can add about another $20,000, and infrastructure is about $35,000. Taking a look from it at a different perspective, that's our unit, or 2 charging stations on the left. It's 125 kW total, each one's 62.5 kW. On the right of the screen is a small Piggly Wiggly on Tatum, 135 kW. It's a lot of power. So there's a lot of energy coming through those charging stations. We got to manage that both safely. We got to manage it also on a good rate base so that we recover those costs.
Charlie, real quick before you go forward, what safety protocols are in place with that piece of equipment that plugs into a car that a kid can't walk up there and take a paperclip and stick inside of there?
They're all UL approved, and they go through United Laboratories and their safety protocols through that manufacturing industry. And then I'll show you some other pictures of how the power is distributed, and there's normal protective devices that you can trip circuit breakers, things of that nature. So here's our site. On the right side, I'll bounce around here a little bit in kind of an orderly flow, but the right side of the screen, you start with your power supply. That's 150 kVA, 480 volt transformer. That's supplying power to the whole site. After that, we have a revenue meter that's installed. We're not going to use this revenue to collect revenues or bill off of it this time. We're just going to use it as a data meter so that we can study the analytics and the performance of how this is working. And then up on the to the left, in the middle, is your power panel, and all your power is delivered to the chargers through that panel, and that's where your protective breakers are at. To get the charger energized, so that if you stuck the paper clip into, you have to activate the charger, so you would have to activate service with that. They are not live when you pick up the cord. And then, obviously, power is delivered from the chargers to the battery through those cords. Our grant, we received $128,000, almost $129,000 from DEQ and Volkswagen. This was Volkswagen's settlement on some emission problems that they had a few years back that you might recall, and this was one of the solutions to settle on that, is to try to stimulate electric vehicle charging across interstate activity. In-kind services, we had about $33,000 worth of in-kind work that we contributed to the projects. Overall, it's about a $161,000 project. It includes 2 DC fast charging stations. You can charge 2 cars at one time. You can charge 1 car at 125 kW, or you can charge 2 at 62.5. It included the equipment installation, the infrastructure, and all of the marketing, customer service, cashiering, telemetry, maintenance, and warranty is covered under this program. So the consumer will activate the service and swipe their card, and they'll charge. They'll pay for their service through their card, through their account, and then a third-party charge point will collect that revenue. And they'll take 10% to do all the cashiering on it, and they'll send us a check every month for the balance.
Mr. Charlie, so does that mean since we have 2 stations, 4 vehicles can be charged at a time?
No, only 2 can be charged at a time.
So it's 1 on each?
It shows 2 cords on each one. That's misleading. That's because there's different adapters.
Okay.
But it's set up for 2 vehicles.
Okay.
If you have the right vehicle and the right size battery, 1 vehicle can take it all, 125 kW.
Gotcha.
Charlie, how do you know what rate this is going to, I mean, how do we know how much to charge these people?
Well, we're doing a rate study right now. We took a crack at it with our own engineering staff. We had Electricities look at it, and we have a professional rate consulting looking at it as well. And we'll spend a little bit more time on that and figure out what we're comfortable with, and probably come back to you with a recommendation later on what would be an acceptable rate. Most likely, we're probably heading towards some sort of time of use and some sort of demand component in that rate. But I need to do a little bit more work on that before I find
So we will charge exactly what it costs us? Is that how?
No, I would like to at least make cost of service and then make some revenue for the city so that it is at profit. It is worthwhile. Another way we can look at this as far as rate study goes is gas equivalent. And does it make sense? You figure, what about $30 to go 200 miles on gas at
20 miles per gallon, somewhere in that range. So could the rate be something very similar to get you $30, get you 200 miles? So it's just a lot to consider, and I really don't want to give me or anybody else too much one time to digest on this.
So Charlie, when you are coming up with a rate structure, which the board will have to approve, I assume, would folks that are using electric cars, are they aware that probably, I don't know this, I haven't studied the market, but obviously if a person is charging a car at 4 in the morning versus on a 110-degree day and we're out here peak demand, you're going to have some type of variable adjustment on that, I assume.
You are spot on with my concerns.
Well, I mean, so you can't go here and charge 15 cents a kilowatt hour flat. You're going to have to figure in that the consumer's going to have to figure that there are demand periods that is going to drive the market price. Is that not true?
It's all based on the adoption rate. And if one vehicle, if it's poorly adopted, I can't spread that cost out to, I have to spread it out to less customers. But if it's heavily adopted, I can spread that cost out to more customers. Make any sense?
Yes.
So,
Well, it makes sense to me that if everybody's out charging cars at 4 in the morning and they're doing a supercharge, that's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper for them and us than if they're doing it 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a 100-degree day.
and you're right on, there's a couple parts to this. There's the part that is public charging and a rate that we may offer on this particular type of unit where the point of delivery of service is in the general public. And then there's all the charging that goes on behind the meter, that we have no idea what happens as a utility. And as those people start charging overnight at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning or at 9 o'clock at night, we have, as a utility, have no idea what they're doing until we see that load profile start to shift at some point in time, and we say, uh-oh, our demands are out of control.
If it's a flat rate, people that are economically trying to do the right thing and charge on off-peak demand, they're going to subsidize the peak periods.
Most likely, we're probably heading towards looking at time of use rates and
Right.
off-peak demand rates. That's probably where we're headed.
And you do probably have to consider your infrastructure, your transformers around the city, your grid as to where you're going to locate these. If you put them in a certain area where your grid structure is not there, that Duke is there and we're not, then you're going to have a cost prohibitive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we had 2, 3, 4 car charging stations to every residential home, and the size of my transformer that I sized for the equipment that most people have today, it may be undersized.
Right.
May be undersized.
There's been a lot of articles written in the past 6 months or so about municipalities getting into this business, and should we become a shell station?
Right.
You know, I'm concerned that this thing's going to cost us a lot of money, and just want to make sure that we can recoup our expenses and make some revenue without it costing them, the customer, $100 or so to charge their vehicle up.
Right. The grant life is very short. It expires early 2023. So I think our exposure is very limited. I think I'll be back with a fairly reasonable rate that the consumer can tolerate and has minimal risk. Obviously, we could set a rate that discourages everybody from using it, if that's what we wanted to do. But it's a great question. Should we be the next Shell station, or should, in pumping
If we're
gas?
in the business, Charlie, if we're in the business of selling electricity, and that's what we do, we sell electricity.
Yep, as long as
The
we
private
sell it
sec-
and make money
yeah,
off
but
of it.
But the private sector is going to buy it from us, and we're going to have to sell it at some rate. So why don't we sell it ourselves? I mean, cut out the middleman.
The difference is it's behind the meter.
Yeah.
It's,
Or one here, she has something.
it's on the meter?
It's behind their meter.
See, we can,
Yeah, understood.
we may end up having to make a decision. Do we want to be point of delivery sale, the Shell station as we know it,
drive up, pump your station, and we are selling it to the endpoint user? Or do we want to say, it always needs, we'll provide you the power, we'll be the trucking company that gets you the gasoline to your tank, and then you put up your retail shop and you resell the electricity. Those are choices that I think we have to think about where we want to be.
So Charlie.
Alderman Harris, and then I'll get your comments.
Yeah. The thing that I was gonna state is I'm not sure if you've been paying attention to, hopefully, the infrastructure bill that they're trying to get passed on the federal level. They're creating incentives for us to go green, and this is part of it, where like if you own a car, the government is gonna try and give you an incentive to go to an electric car. So I'm pretty sure if they're doing it on a residential like level for citizens, I'm pretty sure there's going to be funds and stuff available for municipalities to be able to convert, because it's even with the solar panels, it's about energy efficiency with your home. So I'm watching and waiting, because I know that there's a lot of money and opportunity for us as a municipality to benefit from that infrastructure bill once they pass it, if they can do that.
Yes, and I'm following it too.
Okay.
My sense is that most of it's targeted towards transmission.
Okay.
In the bulk electric system. I have been very vocal with the American Public Power Association in electric cities that I think some of it needs to come down to the distribution companies, because we ultimately can be the bottleneck. You beef up the transmission system to get it here, but I still got to deliver it. And I can't do it at the cost of my ratepayers.
Alderman Best.
Yeah, Charlie, I'm pretty sure that first your priority will be to look at the demand for it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if there's not really a big demand for it here in the city, is it something that?
What is the adoption rate going to be? I don't know, and we have pushes from the Fed saying that they want to stimulate this, and we have to be prepared.
Yeah, you gotta be prepared.
We have an example going on right now where Tesla's in town.
Yes, I was just gonna say that. Is that the same thing that we have down here?
The difference between that is the station at the Red Bear parking lot, we're selling it directly to the customer. We're cashing them out. The Tesla site, we have a revenue meter, and we bill some agent of Tesla one bill per month. And they resell it to whoever they think, or whoever they want at whatever rate that they want. So our sites could theoretically be in competition with each other. And the other part of that is the rate that they're on, I'm watching it very closely, may not be designed for that type of load factor, meaning it's very low load factor. Our rates are designed for medium and high load factor. You're on all day long. So I'm watching that very closely to make sure that rate performs, and if it's not performing, come back with a recommendation on a new type of rate to introduce to our rate schedules. And it's happening all across the country, and that's why I say we need to be prepared, because they just show up, and if you don't have the right tools in place to support this new technology, we could be behind the 8 ball.
Right.
Yes.
Where is that Tesla site that you're talking about?
Moore's apartment.
They have a super fast charging station with 8 charging units in it at the Smithfield Barbecue.
Oh, that's,
Oh,
okay.
you mean Moore's Barbecue, right?
Smithfield.
In Smithfield?
It's
Well, then
Smithfield.
they have it over Moore's, down over by where the new Harris Teeter is. There's some charging stations in there.
I haven't seen those. I'm aware of, there's some Tesla charging stations at Harris Teeter and Carolina Colors.
Okay.
And those are level 2 chargers, and those are behind Harris Teeter's meters, the revenue meters. So Harris Teeter's paying the electric on those.
So I think you touched on the question I had, is what rate? So those Tesla pieces of equipment that's at Smithfield's, they're paying whatever Smithfield's commercial rate is, and obviously the demand's going to be a lot higher.
They're not on the Smithfield account, they're on a separate account, and they're under our medium general service rate. And it's based on the amount of demand that we expect to see. But it will have a very low energy usage. It's a low load factor.
Will they use that demand 10% of the time, 20% of the time, 30% of the time?
And do we know what they're charging? Do we know what they're charging?
No, we don't.
It doesn't show it, like when you go up there, like a gas tank, it doesn't tell you how much it is?
No.
And they won't Tesla up there and plug
They
it
won't,
in.
Yeah,
they
I-
won't
I-
tell me. Sometimes they wrap the sale of their fuel into the purchase price of the car. They've been trying to roll some of that back, but they've been really catty with me on telling me how much they're gonna charge.
So if you own a Tesla, and that's the only ones that those machines will work with?
Yes,
So if you own a Tesla, you pull up to Smithfields and plug it in, and whatever the price is what you're gonna pay. You don't even know what it is.
most likely you did it on an app and you scheduled it, and you know what the price point is today. And it may change tomorrow or the next day. It may fluctuate like gasoline prices. It may be volatile based on the adoption rate.
And will the two pieces of equipment that we put in work on a Tesla?
Tesla is developing an adapter to fit our station.
So right now, this will serve Volkswagen, obviously,
All the other ones.
all of them except for Tesla.
Correct.
Okay, and then my last question is, or comment, I think we talked about this several years ago, but, from a TDA perspective and a downtown New Bern, should be part of their marketing efforts to advertise that, stop here on your way to the beach, fill up,
And they hope to do that.
fill up
Yeah.
theoretically, I guess,
Yeah.
recharge, I should say, and then shop, walk around, and then come back and get your car and then leave.
Maybe not shop and walk around. You're going to get a full charge in about 30 minutes. And most likely that we're going to have to consider penalties if you decide to hang out.
So you don't want it
So you-
sitting on the charge.
No, you're not, for inactive charging, we don't want you to take up that stall when somebody else could be using it. We probably also, at some point in time, need to talk about, do we need to do parking enforcement on those? They're not parking spots.
Yeah, I'm out when it comes to parking. You start talking about parking enforcement?
Send me a memo, Charlie.
Like I said, welcome to the wonderful world of electric vehicle charging.
So Charlie, do you foresee, once these two are up and running, that you're gonna be adding on more here within the city?
It's a great question for us. Both DEQ and Volkswagen is pushing to apply for more. That would be up to us. I'm going to pursue it as far as I can and bring it back to you for your consideration if you want to go forward with it. This particular application cycle required it to be sited on private or on public property within a certain distance to highway access. The other ones that they're pushing now can be owned or operated by the private community. So we could put it somewhere else.
I think we should have some, but, the big push is gonna be Ford trucks are gonna go all battery by, 2035?
I don't know about that, but the Lightning, the 150, bigger chassis, bigger frame, bigger batteries. And they're advertising that truck to not only be your truck, but to be your generator when you get to your work site. And we haven't even talked about, you can take these cars and you can backfeed your house, and it can be the generator for your house.
That's good.
More than my little brain can.
That's good. That's why they're trying to push it from the top down, because especially us, when we have hurricanes, God forbid, we're out of electricity.
Well, it'd be
and
nice
you
if they
have
consulted with us.
a vehicle that's charged up and you can use it as a generator, then I'm specifically speaking to what I know locally with hurricanes and being without electricity.
Me as a consumer, it would be a lot to think about, especially backfeeding the house. If I'm really out of power and I'm going to drain my battery to charge or to feed the house, then what happens when I drain my car too? And now I don't have a car and my power's still not on, which I would never do. I get the power back on really quick, but.
So Charlie, I'm gonna ask you an electrical engineering question. Which is the best charge, the trickle charge, the home charge, or the boost charge? I'd say probably the lower voltage one would be the more benign on the useful life of the battery, but you're the engineer, what is?
They all have different applications. The faster you charge it, the more heat you're going to produce, and the more power you're going to use, and you got to you need bigger stuff. And more things can happen, bad things.
Thank you for all that good
Thanks
information.
for listening to me and your feedback. That's very helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else on the matter review? Okay, let's go to appointments. Any appointments tonight? Alderman Bailey.
No, sir.
Alderman Hare.
No, sir.
Alderman Kinsey.
No, sir.
Alderman Best.
No, sir.
And Alderman Odom. Attorney's report.
Nothing for tonight, Mayor.
Okay, here's the big one, the city manager's report. I think
Yes, sir.
that's-
I've got several things I'd like to talk about tonight. First of all, I'd like to introduce our new Assistant City Manager, Marvin Williams. He's in the crowd. Marvin, come on up. Marvin is currently the Chief of Police with the City of Havelock. He's got 30 years of experience with the State Highway Patrol, retiring as District Commander, and he'd also served in the Marine Corps. Marvin has a bachelor's degree in psychology from Washington University and a Master of Arts in Strategic Studies from the United States Army War College. We're very excited to have Marvin join us. We look forward to working together, and Marvin did a great job during his interview. We had 40 applicants for this position from across the country, and we're really looking forward to Marvin being here.
Mayor and Board, first of all, I'd like to thank the city manager for giving me this opportunity at this position. I've lived here in Eastern North Carolina for over 30 years, and I've lived and worked here, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity now to be part of living and working in this particular community. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of good people in this community, and between my wife and I, we are definitely looking forward to being part of the community here, and I'm looking forward to working with all the city employees and working for the citizens and the visitors to the city.
All I've got to
Well,
say
welcome,
is
Chief.
Havelock coming after us. They gave us Amanda, now we got this already. So we're going to be in trouble. But I'm
Glad.
grateful to have you on board.
Glad to have you on board, Chief. Thank you very much.
So Marvin will be starting in November, so we're looking forward to that.
Welcome to New Bern.
Great, welcome.
Welcome to the city of New Bern.
Somebody needs to get him a bear pen.
Yeah, oh, I got it.
Next item we've got is that we just had Month Fest this past weekend, and we had a lot of city employees involved with the setup of this and monitoring, so I can't say enough about the work that police, fire rescue, public works, parks and recreation, and public utilities did. All of those departments also had booths set up. Fire rescue did a great demonstration. I think some of our department heads participated in that, and so it was a very good time. Staff worked very hard for this event, and it was very good. We're glad to come back and offer this after a year of no festival. Also, Mum Feast will be coming up this weekend. We'll have a few street closures, and they'll have some bands and events and activities downtown, so please check that out. Next item I'd like to remind you of is New Bern 101 kicks off this week, this Thursday. This is a 7-week course. We currently have 20 participants signed up, so we're excited about this for our inaugural course. All of the departments will be visited over this 7 weeks. The final meeting will be here at City Hall for all of our participants will have an opportunity to sit through Board of Aldermen meeting, and we're also going to carve some time out for the Alderman to speak with the participants and have a Q&A session. So we look forward to offering this on an annual basis, twice a year, spring and fall. And if you have any questions on that, we're happy to answer that. It should be a good time for everyone. Next item we have is we have been doing some research on the Tisdale House Black Swan over on Broad Street. After speaking with staff, we've also had some studies done on the house. We looked at possibly relocating this, and at this time, staff recommends releasing an RFQ similar to what we did with the Gant Restaurant to have outside individuals look at relocating the building or demolishing the structure. We're happy to seek guidance from the board on how you'd like for us to proceed with this.
I'm just going to speak for me. I would like for you to proceed with a quote opportunity for folks to quote either moving the home hopefully that's what will happen, and with a time limit of 60 days. And if they, also, you know, there's a lot of valuable material in there, so are you thinking about or a quote opportunity time for how long? Were you going to keep that open 30 days or what?
This will be open for about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
And then we'll give the opportunity for them to relocate or demolish within 60 days. And so salvaging would obviously be part of that process.
And with the removal or moving of it within 60 days, is that right?
That's correct.
I would go along with that, and you do need to get direction from the board, and the board, please let the manager know what you want to do on that.
I support what you said, Mayor. Let's go ahead and see what can be done. And honestly, too, if there's anything that can be salvaged, if there's no one that's going to bite at it and it's something we have to do, is there a possibility we could connect with Habitat Humanity? They build homes. Maybe some of that stuff can be refurbished and utilized, and maybe it's something that we can talk to Mike and Antoinette about in regards to that if we can't find anyone to either demolish it or take ownership of it and move it, and we're responsible to, you know, move forward. I think we should do that.
Is that proper direction? Does anybody else have any comments?
I support that. I would just make a comment that whatever the legal process would be, is what we don't want is someone to bid on this with great intentions, and 60 days come and they say that they're 60 days from moving it, and then we've got a situation where we've got to move forward with the procedure of getting it demolished ourselves, and then did they pay us money? Did we give the money back? So we just need to make sure it's very clear and very straightforward that if somebody steps out on that limb, they know where they're going, because we don't want anybody to get, you know, in trouble, because it's not easy to move a house, obviously.
And I would ask that the New Bern Preservation Foundation be contacted. You know, they may say no immediately, but, you know, they have a history of moving houses in New Bern. Many of our historic homes are not in their original place, and I certainly would like them to have the opportunity to have a look, since it is, a historic home. And if they want to move it, fine. If not, I agree with Alderman Harris here that Habitat for Humanity is the perfect opportunity to have the reuse of the lumber and maybe mantles or other things like that to be repurposed.
What else do you have, sir?
That's all I have, sir.
Could you give us an update on Martin Marietta? What's going on?
Yes, sir. So we are coming to the end of our grant with the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund. We had consultants from the state visit us last week. They toured the area and looked at the components that we were required to put in the grant. They signed off on everything. We have a little bit of road work. We've got fences and the gates to complete in the front with the entrance, so we're doing a little work on that. The goal is to have a grand opening on this phase and for vehicles to be able to drive throughout the one section of the park by mid-November. So we'll be coming back probably another 2 weeks to give a grand opening date and announce our celebration. We're really excited about that.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Let's go to new business, starting with Alderman Odom.
Foster, what could you share with the public about the carnival, I guess, that's taking place? My 12-year-old saw he thought it was remnants left over from Mumfest. I said, no, it's something different. So.
That's right. We have an amusement company. Magical Midways is in Lawson Creek Park. They're going to open up this Friday. They will be there for approximately 10 days. They'll finish up on the 24th of October. Their hours will be from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. during those times, and they are selling passes to go in there, $15, all you can ride for the evening. They have quite a lot of events and activities going on with that. This is not a sponsorship with the city. Basically, they have paid to rent that facility. They are excited. We're excited to have them here. So it's a great opportunity for citizens to come out and enjoy a family-friendly time at Lawson Creek Park.
And then the last comment is, I think, Charlie, your crew did a really good job with the bucket truck lifting the kids up as part of a attraction at Mumfest. So I wanted to challenge Jordan for next year. If you can get the sewer manhole covers open, and let's see how many people are willing to go under there versus riding up in a bucket truck. We'll have a little contest. How about that? That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Alderman Best.
Yes, I just have one thing. I guess I can direct this to George. At the intersection there of Racetrack Road and News Boulevard, right there by, I'm gonna say, the Dog's Dream, that area right up in there. If you're coming out and trying to turn on a News Boulevard, going left or right, the light pole that's there, it is really blocking the view of traffic. And I know a while back, can't remember how long back it was, we talked with Matt about getting in touch with DOT about seeing, I think we was asking for a traffic light, I think it was Alderman Kinsey, a traffic light to go there. So I didn't know if that's something that you can pursue to see what can be done about that, because it's really hard to get out there, and it's going to be some really tragic accidents there.
I can certainly reach out to DOT and see what intentions they have at that intersection, and if it's obstruction from a view, at least on that end, we can certainly see if that's one of our poles or a Duke pole, and see what we can do to help facilitate moving it out of your line of sight.
Yeah, that would be great, because there was an accident there, I think it was Friday. So it's really needs some attention, and I'm quite sure they're not going to put a traffic light there, but if they can do something with the pole.
Yes, ma'am, I'll report back to you.
All right, thank you.
Find out.
And that's all I have. Ma'am.
Okay, Alderman Kinsey.
I don't have anything tonight, sir.
Alderman Astor.
Yes, sir. First thing I'd like to do is make an announcement that we just found out today that the power in Taberna is going to be off, or scheduled outage, I reckon is the proper terminology, this Friday morning from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock p.m. It's going to affect Bowling Loop, 601 to 609 Taberna Circle, to Cena Road, and to Cena Court, about 75 homes. And I'm assuming this is, Charlie, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming this is part of that putting in the switch gear that eventually will help backfeed Taberna in case there's some power outages of some sort, or separating the power or something. You want to explain what it's for?
That's correct. And it's also tied into moving infrastructure for NCDOT. So it's kind of a juggling act to get all that infrastructure moved around and tied in. We thought that Friday would probably be a good time for, it's primarily a residential neighborhood. Most people shouldn't be impacted by it at that time of day.
Thank you. Also, just wanted to remind people that travel Old Airport Road that's going through the Evans Mill. I've received complaints today about excessive speeding on that road. I will be talking to Chief Gallagher here shortly, and to try to get some enforcement out there. I know that the chief has been doing some extra enforcement out there because I see them down there all the time. But I also read on Facebook, as soon as someone drives through and sees a police car there running radar, they announce it to the whole neighborhood that there's a policeman running radar through there. So I'll ask the chief if he would to try to get some enforcement down there. And I want to find out about this fire department challenge, Bobby, because, I mean, you raised quite a bit of money on that. Would you come up and explain to us what that was all about? And let us know how some of our department heads did.
What's your question again?
Paying attention, aren't you? Fire department challenge.
Yes, sir. As you know, we've been working with NBA, raising funds for NBA for years now. And we did the truck pull a few months ago where it's Hope for Harrison. Well, this time we decided to do some firefighter challenges. And it's basically running through the agility course is what it is. We had one where the adults ran through, and then we had one for the kids running through. And we also had Duncan Booth. We raised almost $1,200. So.
And all that to go to the MDA?
That's correct. All
right, great. Did you have a department head that didn't Charlie go through it?
Myself and Charlie ran through it.
How well did Charlie do?
Well, that depends on who you ask.
Thank you, Chief. And one more thing, George and his department, thank you very much. We've had the stop bar and stop sign coming out of Bryce's Crossing needs to be relocated since they widened the road. And George and his crews went out there today and was surveyed it, and I'm assuming that the stop bar will be painted real soon, and the stop sign will be relocated as soon as the locate people come in, make sure we don't dig through any Suddenlink cables. Thank you very much for your response on that, George. That's all I have.
Okay. Alderman Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, I just want to thank everyone that has been in prayers and support. I come officially 1 year breast cancer free as of October 7th, so I thank my colleagues that wore pink and my staff members that love me that wore pink, so I appreciate that. Another thing, for people that may or may not know my mom's story, she made it to 71, so she is still here, and we just thank God every day. Lastly, I had an amazing conversation with Miss Antoinette Bosky Chadwick from Habitat of Humanity. They are doing a lot of good stuff in the community in regards to revitalizing what we're doing with the redevelopment. But one thing in particular that they're doing is they're out here educating and looking for block captains if you are in the greater Duffyfield residence area. And they're looking for you to step into leadership roles so that basically you're the block captain, you go to these trainings, you go into your community, you figure out everything that's going on, you bring it to the table, and they're working to plan to see how that they can bridge the gap for all of the inequities that they have in the community. So if you are interested in being a block captain and you're in the greater Duffyfield community, that's the community that they're working with right now. You can reach Antoinette Bosky Chadwick at Habitat, and that number is 252-633-5512. And then lastly, I just want to give a shout out to Chief Boyd and his staff. A couple of weeks ago, you guys went out to Trent Park and did some safety training, and my daughter came home, and the other day she decided to say that she wanted to be a firefighter. So I told her, I said, well, I'll go tell Chief Boyd to let him know that he might have a candidate when she gets older. So I just appreciate the things that you do, even with Chief Gallagher going into the schools and just doing teaching is so important. So thank you so much for what you're doing. That's all I have.
Okay. Alderman Bagel.
A couple things. I know that Foster mentioned about we had a successful Mum Fest this weekend, but a heartfelt thanks to George, the Public Works Department, to the Police Department. It took many, many people to make that happen, and I have to say I've been doing Mum Fest for 40 years now, and this was the smoothest. Everything seemed to be in order. The cleanup was quick as usual, and everything got put back together, and I just want to thank our staff because it doesn't just happen. It takes a lot of work. Of course, the Swiss Bear people put it out there. It takes a lot of work from our staff. I saw policemen everywhere, so I knew there was great security for our visitors, and it looked beautiful. Our town looked beautiful, and Foster, thank you to Parks and Rec. I see Carrie sitting back there. The flowers were just amazing at City Hall, the big wagon, that looked great, the welcome sign, the arch at Union Point. I saw people all weekend long, photo ops, and sharing them all over social media. So thank you. It was really wonderful to see all of that, and I just want to thank all of the staff that participated. It just doesn't happen by itself, so really appreciate that. I just wanted to ask, the last meeting in my notes, I had asked about the surplus property list. Mr. Ruggieri, are you working? Where is he? Or are you working on that back there? Are we going to have that soon? Just yes or no? I mean, it's in progress?
It's always in progress, so we can talk afterwards about what we've been doing.
Yeah, because we had asked to get an updated surplus property list.
It is updated.
So there's no other additional? Okay. I'd like to get a copy of that if I could.
Sure.
We'll have it. What, the updated?
No, for everything.
No, I've got one more thing I wanted to say. I want to extend my deepest sympathies once again to the Sampson family. Miss Sampson's son Ernest passed away this week, and I'm so sorry. I mean, I think Miss Sampson has been through enough as it is with the loss of her husband and now the loss of her son. So just please keep that family in prayer. And, you know, it's been a rough time for them. So just want to remember her and her family. That's it.
I was gonna add that, thank you, and then the other thing was for all that's watching, we have a Stanley White Rec meeting October 19th at 6 p.m. here. It is open to the public on Tuesday, City Hall, 6 p.m., Stanley White Recreation Center, committee meeting. That's it.
Okay, any other new business tonight? Do we need a closed session tonight?
No, sir.
And is there any other business to come before the new Board of Aldermen at this time?
Make a motion, we adjourn, sir.
Second. Yeah.
Motion and second, is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carries, we are adjourned.